This is page 84 of your math journal. We're going to write this one, call this one solving division equations. Alright, solving division equations. Okay, let's remind ourselves of the steps for solving equations. The first one started with F. Find the variable. Two, started with an I. It was identify the operation to undo. Three, started with an S. Solve by undoing with the opposite operation to both sides. And last but not least, C, check your answer by plugging it back in. Okay, these same steps are going to apply to today. The difference today is we're just going to have stuff that has division in it. So let's go ahead and write these three equations. Let's do x divided by 4 equals 256. Let's do m over 1.2 equals 9.8. Let's try those first. Actually, let's do one more. Let's do d over 7 equals 1/8. Alright, so let's look at this one. Find your variable, x. It's being divided by 4. What's the opposite of dividing by 4? Timesing by 4. Opposite operations cancel each other out. I'm going to times this by 4. 6 times 4 is 24. Carry my 2. 4 times 5 is 20. Plus 2 is 22. Regroup 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 2 is 10. So I get x equals 1,024. Sounds good. How do I make sure I'm right? Plug it back in. So I'm going to say that 1,024 divided by 4 has to equal 256. Check and make sure you're right. Okay, 1,024 divided by 4. 4 does not go into 1. 4 does go into 10. 2 times minus 8 gives me 2. 4 goes into 22. 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Leaves me with 2. 4 goes into 24. 6 times minus 24 gives me 0. So 256 matches 256. We are correct. Okay, same idea here. Remember that anything written like this just means divide. So you're going to undo dividing by 1.2 by timesing by 1.2. And they're going to cancel each other out. So you're going to times this by 1.2. Okay, just to make it easier, I'm going to write it underneath here. 2 times 8 is 16. Regroup 1. 2 times 9 is 18, plus 1 is 19. 0 placeholder. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 9 is 9. Add it up. 6, 17, regroup 1, 11, and we have 1, 2 places behind the decimal, so 1, 2 places behind the decimal in my answer. I get that M is equal to 11.76. How do I make sure I'm right? I plug it in. So I'm going to say that 11.76 divided by 1.2 needs to equal 9.8. Don't just jump to conclusions that you're right. Make sure you're right. So 11.76 inside the box divided by 1.2. Move the decimal over 1 time, move it over 1 time here. Okay, 12 does not go into 1, 12 does not go into 11, 12 will go into 117. How many times? Think about our 12 times tables. 12 times 10 is 120, 12 times 9. My brain is having a brain fart. 12 times 9, oh my goodness. 108, there we go. I was like, I know that's what it is. I gotta have the right number though to minus it. So, minus 108. 7 minus 8, I can't do, so I have to borrow. 17 minus 8 is 9. 0 minus 0, I can't do. 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, move on to the next one. 6. 12 goes into 96 8 times. Minus 96 gives me 0. So right there, I'm proving that those two are correct. By doing the inverse, I'm proving that they match up. Okay, let's try this one. D divided by 7 equals 1/8. I know some of your brains are going, but I don't like fractions. They aren't that bad. Remember, this means this number divided by 7. So how do I undo dividing by 7? I times by 7. But I have to times by 7 over here. Well, if I'm timesing a fraction, timesing fractions is nice. Is everybody okay with me doing 7 over 1 for 7? Alright, multiply across the top. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 8 is 8. Well, that would make sense. If I take 7/8 and I divide it by 7, I should get 1/8, right? So we're saying that D equals 7/8. Okay, I could, if this, I know some of you are going to think this looks funny and it doesn't work with your brain. That's fine. If you don't like that, rewrite it like this. 7/8 divided by 7 means the same exact thing. And we're going to prove that it gives us 1/8. So, remember when dividing with fractions, keep the first, flip the second, change the sign. 7 and 7 cancel each other out. Gives me 1 and 1. 1 times 1 across the top is 1. 8 times 1 across the bottom is 8. Those two definitely match up. 1/8 is correct. Alright, now where would you use this in real life? Okay, we're going to write a story problem, and then I want you to write an equation to go with it. So here we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Joanna had some ribbon. And cut it into pieces that were 2.5 feet each. She had 6 pieces. She had 6 pieces. Write an equation and solve. Okay, before I can write an equation, I first need to define the variable. So what's the part I don't know? Joanna had some ribbon. So we're going to call maybe R. R for original amount of ribbon. So let's think about what happened. She had the ribbon to begin with. She divided it into pieces that were 2.5 feet long. And she had 6 pieces when she was done. So we're trying to figure out how much she had to begin with. So this is where I'm going to undo what happened. So my variable is R. It was divided into groups of 2 1/2. So I'm going to times by 2 1/2. So I would times this side by 2 1/2. Okay, remember when working with fractions, improper and nicer when we're doing multiplication and division. So I'm going to keep this as 6 over 1. And I'm going to turn this into 5. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So this would be 5 over 2. Okay. I'm timesing. I do not change anything. Remember, the flipping is only on division. Don't get confused and think you flip here. I keep it times. So, cross cancel anything I can. Well, 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15 over 1. So I get 15 on this side equals R. So I'm saying that R is 15 feet of ribbon. Let's check our answer and see if that makes sense. So I'm going to do 15 divided by 2 1/2 and prove that I get 6. So keep the first, flip the second. Remember this was 5 halves, so understand where I'm getting 2 over 5. Change the sign. This is the division, which is why I flipped it. Flip and change the sign. Okay, right here this cross cancels. 5 will go into 5 one time. 5 will go into 15 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6 over 1. Those match up, and I can prove that my answer is correct.